Hello friends, welcome to TechnoPoints. In this video, we are going to learn about another important concept in Android, that is data binding. So what is data binding? Data binding is a support library which helps us to bind our UI components with the data source and vice versa. So before continuing with the data binding library, I think you should have some idea about view binding library. If you have that idea, then you are good to go with this video. But if you don't have idea about view binding library, then no need to worry. I have created a separate video about view binding library which explains you everything about view binding in just 10 minutes. And I have put the link for that in the description box itself. So please go to that video first and then come back to this video. So coming back to the features provided by data binding library is data binding library can do everything what the view binding library can do, plus it provides even more functions to make our life easy. Like it provides a two-way communication. In the view binding we have option to only one-way communication, but in the data binding library we have the option for two-way communication between layout file and our data sources and vice versa. It allows us a two-way communication. And another advantage is provide is binding adapters. So what are binding adapters? Binding adapters are actually used to have custom setters for some properties of our views. Sounds confusing, right? A little bit, right? But no need to worry. Let me go to the implementation now and I'll explain everything in depth there. Let's continue. So here I have created a sample project which is an empty activity. So let us first add data binding to this project. Let's go to build.gradle, which is model level, and at the end of this Android tag, put here build features and the braces data binding as true, and let's sync. Great, the project sync is successful and data binding is now configured in our project. So let's go to our layout file. So we'll create a simple layout of one edit text and a one button and a one text view. So we'll enter some text in the edit text and we'll click on that button as a submit, and then the whatever the contents entered in the edit text will be shown in the text view. This is a simple, very simple one, but the idea is how the data binding works. So here let's remove this text view and let's add the edit text, the plain text, add constraints to it, and button, add constraints to the button also, and then on text view, add constraints to the text view also. Now let's give some margin to each of the component. Okay, now our layout is ready. Now in order to implement the data binding in this layout, we have to make some alterations. For that, Android Studio helps us. Just click on the topmost root layout, whatever we have. In this case, we have constant layout. So just go to there and press Alt plus Enter. It will give you suggestions, and the first suggestion it will give is convert to data binding layout. So let's click on that, and Android Studio will automatically do the work. So let's have a look at the layout we have designed. It is somewhat altered, like all the layout has been grabbed in the layout and slash layout tag, and also it has given some data slash data tags here. So ignore the data slash data tags for now, we'll discuss them later. So as we have enabled data binding as true in our project, so for every layout file there will be separate binding file be generated with all the references of the views contained in this layout. So for this activity main also a separate binding file is generated as we have discussed in the view binding lecture. So let's go to main activity. We have to do some alterations here also. So at first let's declare that file the binding, and then so we declare that here itself in the class file binding, and we already discussed the name, how the naming conventions the file uses. So it will use activity main binding. So we are already seeing the file here, say, same as like view binding. So we click here. Okay, we'll declare it as a latent val. Okay, so here we have to initialize that variable. We'll initialize this binding equals data binding util, dot set content view. We can attach it from here itself. Let's cut it, paste it here. Set content view, but it takes two parameters. So first one is a activity. So we'll pass here this, and we are done with the initialization. Now we can access any element in the view by just using this binding, as we already discussed in the view binding. So after clicking on binding dot, it is giving us all the IDs which we have defined in our activity main.xml. So here is button, text view, and edit text person name. So we can directly access those. The scope of the view binding library was only up to this point, but in this data binding, we will not directly assign the value to text view. Instead, we'll create a separate class, we'll assign the value in the elements in the class, and then we'll bind that variable with our layout. So let us see how we can do that. Here, let us create a new data class. Got in data class, and let's say it as a standard. Okay, so we'll create a one field here, that is user text, which is of type of a string. Okay, now here comes the role of this data slash data tags. So inside this we can refer any data as a variable. Like we have here variable tag, and inside that this variable tag takes two fields as a name and type. So for name we can write any, like let's say std, and in the value we want this field to be of standard type. So let's do the standard. We are getting the session. Let's click on the first one, and yes, now this std is a variable in this layout file which is of type standard. Okay, now let's try running our application. It is launched. Now I'll put my name here and click on submit. So we can see here that my name has been appeared here. Whatever we'll enter here, it will be automatically updated here. But we are here, please take a note of this thing, that we are not directly assigning this value to this text view. Instead, we are taking the value whatever the user entered, we have created the object of that, and we are assigning this object to this separate variable in the layout file, and the text view is automatically getting updated with the value dot user text, and we are able to see the updated text here. Now we are here in the main activity file. So what we are intending to do, we'll take the value whatever the user enter in the edit text, and assign on clicking on the submit button will assign that value to the text view we have created. So let's make some modifications in the layout file. Like I'll make this text as a hint, and this button name I'll replace with submit, and this text view I'll also make this as a hint, and make a separate hint as let's say entered text will appear here. Okay, so now we'll do that thing. Let's get binding dot button dot set on click listener. Inside that we'll take the value with whatever the user has entered. So let's say it as a user value. Let's take it from again binding dot edit text person name dot text dot to string. Okay, now we have the value in the user value variable, and now we'll assign this value to this object in this parameter user text. For that, let's create the object of that standard, and inside that pass this value user value. Now this object is created, but what we are expecting the next after button click, we are expecting that whatever the value we have entered, user has entered, will show that to the text view, but we will not assign directly to this text view id here because we are using data binding library. So let's use the power of data binding library to do this task. So how? Let me show you. Here, as we have already created this variable std. So this std is a variable applicable to this layout file, and it is of type standard. So it takes the value of standard type. And let's make a change here. We'll make this Android text attribute refer to the user text value inside this standard, because we already have a variable std of type standard. So we can definitely use all the values inside this object. So we have specific syntax for that. We'll create at the rate inside the curly braces. We are able to refer std, and on clicking on dot we'll get user text. Okay, we'll click on that. Now this user text is the same field which is we are defined here. So let's try clicking on it and it will navigate to here, right? So I hope you got the idea what is going here. So we'll assign the object, this object, to this variable. We will not manually assign the value to this text view. Instead, we have created a separate object from that value, and we will now assign this object to this new field which we have created in the layout file, that is std. So binding.std equals to this object. Now you can try clicking on this std and it will navigate here, so that the value is being referred passed to here, and whatever the layouts which are referring values from this object will be automatically updated once this object is updated, right? So this std.user text will be automatically updated once we assign a different value to this std. Like here we have only one value as a user text here, but let's say we have 10 or 12 values here. So all of that variables will be automatically updated according to whatever the object will pass here. Hope you got the idea. So that's how we can use data binding in our project. So that was all about activity. But what if we are using fragments in our project? So because fragment is the most recommended way now, so the process is not much different, but let me show you how to do it in case of fragments. So I have created a blank fragment here, and the same as we have seen in the activity, we just clicks alt plus enter here and convert the layout to data binding layout, so that in a background this file will be generated, binding file for this fragment blank will be generated, and then we can simply refer here with get init where binding fragment blank binding. Okay, and now we have to initialize it here, so we'll write binding equals again data binding utils dot inflate. We'll use inflate here, and we'll plus first parameter as inflator, which we are getting from here. So first parameter is inflator here, and rest of the parameter are same as this inflate method. We can just directly copy this one and paste those here. Yeah, that's it, and they can just remove this statement, and but we have to return here. So what it is returning ultimately, it is returning a view, a nullable view. Actually it is returning. So how we can get the view from this binding object? We can get the view from this binding object by binding dot root, get root. Now the root is actually also returning a view which is a non-nullable view. So that's how we can do it in case of fragments. Now one more concept is remaining, that is binding adapters. So earlier I had just told you the definition of binding adapters, but now let me show you practically what are binding adapters and how we can use that. So basically binding adapter is a thing which can let us create some custom field in our layout. For example, here we are using Android colon text and passing it as a parameter a user text attribute. But we can create a separate field, whatever we like, a custom field. Like in case of Android text, we can create here another one. So let's say we'll create a separate custom attribute for this one. For that, we have to declare the binding adapter outside of any class, so that we can access it everywhere from every layout file. So we can also create a separate class, or we can write down in this file itself also, as Kotlin allows us to do that. So I'll create a separate function here. Actually, this should be an extension function. So as I have to deal with some text view, as I have to create a custom text for text view, I'll create some extension function from text view, function text view dot, and let's say set custom text, and I take one parameter as a string, custom user text. This should be a parameter type of string, and inside this function I can do anything with the text. I can just assign this text to my text view. So this is, if we refer this here, so this refers to the text view. So this dot text equals custom user text. So and after so this, what this will do, whatever the text being passed to this attribute, to this function, will be applied to this text views text attribute. And to make this as a binding adapter, we have to annotate it using binding adapter, which is coming from data binding. And here inside the braces, we have to declare what what text we should be using, we will be using for naming those. Like here there is a Android colon text, so similarly what name will be given to that binding adapter. So we just have to give a name. So we'll set that just a custom text. But now still it is giving an error. So let's see what's the error. It is showing that to use data binding annotations, apply Kotlin KPT plugin in your modules build.gradle. Yes. So as we are using the annotations by Kotlin, so we have to declare the Kotlin annotation processor plugin. So let us define that in the module level build.gradle id and copy this one org.jetbrains.kotlin and dot KAPT. KAPT stands for Kotlin Annotation Processing. Okay, just sync now. Okay, now we can see the error is gone, and now we are successfully able to use the binding adapter in our layout file. So if we go to activity main.xml, just directly replace this one with whatever we have given name. We have given name as custom text. Okay, let's see if we get suggestions. Yes, we are getting the suggestion as custom text, and just paste enter, and yes, it is not showing any error. It is accepting that as a parameter, and we are passing here a string value to it, to the binding adapter. And if we go to that binding adapter, we'll receive the text here, and we'll assign that text, and this text will be applied to that text view. Now let's run the app and see if we are getting the right results. Now we are launching our app. The Gradle is building. And oh, unfortunately our app has stopped. Let's see what went wrong. So it is showing null pointer exception, parameter specified as not null is null, and it is talking about parameter custom user text. Sorry, custom text. Okay, so it is talking about this parameter. Actually here the null value is getting passed. Now before pressing this submit button, we have this variable declared here as std, but it don't have any value. So by default it will contain a null value. But as we know, Kotlin holds a separate data type for a null and nullable value for each of the separate data types. Like here we have just defined a string, and according to Kotlin rules it should not hold a null value. So that's why it won't allow a null value to pass through it. And as the object here is not initialized, so that's why here std user text value is also null, and the null value is getting passed through this binding adapter, and that's why it is giving an exception. So we can solve this problem in two ways. Either set the object value to something else so that it should not carry a null value, like this one, binding.std as standard, and we'll pass here an empty string so that the value will not be null but it will be empty string. But there is also one small solution for this one, is we can just add a question mark here itself, so that it should allow a nullable value to go inside this and set. So our application should not crash at this case. Let us try relaunching the app and see if it still crashes or works fine. So here our app is launched without any errors. So we can now test it. Let me put my name here and click on submit. And yes, it's working as expected. So that's how binding adapters work, and I hope you have got all idea about the binding adapters and the data binding concept. I have tried to cover most of the things in data binding. So I hope you have got enough understanding of data binding now. If you have some questions, just put down in the comments and I will try my best to answer you. So if this video has helped you, then please like and share with your friends and subscribe this channel to get such more knowledgeable and informative videos. And I'll keep posting more and more videos about latest Android topics. So that's enough for today. We'll meet in next video with some trending another Android topic. Till then, bye bye.